Hi everyone, Namaste. This is Jano Anjali Kochar. Welcome back to my channel Tookwings blog by Jano Anjali Kochar. तो आज आ गया है फ्राइडे। फ्राइडे को हम कहानियों की बात करते हैं। फ्राइडे को हम पॉडकास्ट भी कर। तो जो आज का पॉडकास्ट है ना, आज का पॉडकास्ट है जिसपे हमने बात करी है वो है कॉन्वर्जेशन टॉपिक जो काफी रेलेवेंट है, दैट इज कॉर्पोरेट कम्युनिकेशन. Communication is part of all of our lives, but corporate communication is something that is, a bit different from our regular conversation, regular communication. So uske jo jitne bhi concepts hain, be it non-verbal communication or be it introvert versus extrovert, be it is language important in corporate communication, and how as a leader you should manage things if you're starting off your journey as a leader, or if you're starting off in a corporate environment, what are the key things that you should keep in mind? So we have talked about a lot of things today in our today's podcast. And by the way, today's podcast is with Mr. Amit Khanna, who is an international speaker, who is an executive coach, and who is the author of this wonderful book in my hand, Corporate Circus. So, he has broken down a lot of complex concepts simply for us. And मुझे लगता है कि अब ज़्यादा बात नहीं करते हैं, आप आज का पॉडकास्ट देखो. एंड आई नो, आई एम श्योर, आई एम 100% श्योर आपको आज बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिलने वाला है. एंड या सो लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड. हाय अमित, वेलकम टू कहानियां बाय टूक्विंग्स ब्लॉग.
Hi, Anjali. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Great. So, we are so excited to have you here today. The number one reason is because we have your book here and we will be, talking to the author himself. And second and very important reason is that we are going to talk about a very relevant subject, that is corporate communication. And I think it is important for not just who is someone who is starting their journey in the corporate world, but we'll be diving deep into concepts that are important for everyone who is dealing with this corporate environment, be it for leaders, or be it concepts like introvert versus extrovert or non-verbal communications. We'll be covering that everything with you. We'll grill you with a lot of questions today. But at Tookwings, we have a tradition that the soul of Tookwings is that about storytelling, about कहानियाँ. तो हमारा यही ट्रेडिशन है, कहानियाँ कहते हैं, कहानियाँ सुनते हैं. So Tookwings पे we start with one story that is not just about your book, your brand, yourself, but something that makes you you. So yeah.
Interesting. Kahaniyaan are the key, right? Stories are the things. And well, I'm made up of a lot of stories like anybody, but I'll share why I am like this. Okay. Because मैंने खुद after, I'm 45 plus now, so I've done a lot of analysis. And so it started basically, when I was growing up, I'm the single child to my parents. Okay, no brother, no sister. So when I was growing up, it was a bit of a lonely time sometimes, right? When you're alone.
Right.
And I was very pampered. Okay, a boy, single boy, you can imagine, right? Uh, but then I lost my father at age 15. So what happened is all of a sudden we were good with the financial aspects. All right. I never knew what the hell finances is and anything. Okay. But all of a sudden there was a dip, like massively huge dip. Okay. And that's where my life kicked in. That's where I started working in 1994. And other part of my life was that I have been a dumb student. Okay. What I mean to say is that, I remember from grade 5 से मुझे सिर्फ एक ही ताना मिलता था कि तू जाके ठेले पे केला बेचेगा. I think that were the jobs back then, right? If you don't study. So, but that got installed in my head so badly that it became a thing that I cannot study. So why should I study? Right? So यही attitude चलता रहा till my graduation. And during the graduation, I just tried that, hey, you know what? Let me try hard. And things weren't completely different. I did good and so on. But two factors, right? So my father died. I started working. I'm poor in studies. You can imagine what output would be as a graduate. Not so good. आईटी में एंटर हुआ तो देखा मैंने कि यार there's a lot of amazing people. But the thing that I realized working with them and me indifferent is that I could talk. मुझे technically कुछ ना आता हो, but I know my way around. Probably because I'm a typical Mumbai citizen, so I can find my way. Street smart, right? So that has actually benefited a lot to me. Okay. And because of that, because I changed my attitude, I found mentors. There are people, we don't call them as mentors, तभी, right? हमारे कुछ अंकल आंट होंगे या कुछ अच्छे फ्रेंड्स होंगे या कॉलीग्स होंगे, though they mentor us, but we never used to call them that word, right? So I got some of them and I eventually changed everything. The love of teaching that I had since long, that helped me now. So the core that I am right now, if I say this, I'm a giver in the sense of I love to connect with people. All right. Because like मुझे मजा आता है, okay? I just have enjoy knowing other people, knowing what they do, why they do and stuff. Okay, that's one. Second is that I love to teach.
Right.
So एक हमारे यहाँ एक रहता, राइट, कॉन्सेप्ट, हर एक को ज्ञान बांटना अच्छा लगता है, राइट? So but if you channelize that properly, you can definitely give a right knowledge, right? So at the end of the day, I feel I'm a giver, teacher, mentor, coach, whatever you want to call it as. But that's what my identification has become, is that I love to help people and of course seek in return what they can help me.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
So that's what my whole life has summarized now into.
Right. So, you talk about communication. I mean, being street smart, and communication is your way to be, right? So, is it different when it comes to corporate communication, or is it just the same that you need to be yourself and be good at communication, or is it different when it comes to corporate communication?
I think so. Communication is basically, see, there are two things, right? One is talking,
Right.
and the other is communicating. Correct? So that's the first key difference. The third key difference is corporate communication. Because even in the communication world, this is my personal experience. Like I said, I used to talk well.
Right.
All right. But despite that, I had a lot of setbacks in corporate life. And I realized that वहां पे अपने ये street smart style might not work all the time. It works, but in the coffee cafeteria. Okay, it works when you go out and have drinks outside your office. But in the meeting room, sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
So there you need to fine tune your communication so that it adapts to the corporate style better. Like you might have heard this: cut short, get to the point, and things like that, right? Summarize it for me, and most importantly, conflicts. So these things all fall under communication at the end of the day. So that's why I personally feel it's quite different than your regular communication.
Right. So while we're talking about corporate communication, from your book itself, I was reading it and I found a definition, and we'll, explore that definition a bit. You write, and I quote that it is not just about exchanging information, but also about managing and orchestrating all internal and external communications aimed at creating a favorable point point of view among stakeholders on which the company depends. So then you say that it is a bridge between the corporation, its stakeholder, and the public, right? So let's just break it down a little and hear it from you yourself, from the author itself. What basically corporate communication revolves around, and key things that someone who is starting their journey in the corporate environment should keep in mind.
Sure. See, the one of the key things and what I wrote, and let me explain it further, right? The most important thing that I tell people is stakeholder management. Now, just to give you and the audience here a background, I'm a true project manager by heart. What I mean to say is that I do everything in terms of project management, even thinking many times. And there's a concept called as agile. So I truly love it and I try to live with it. So that's why my words are also, there you will find these as buzzwords. Okay. So stakeholder management. What it means, it's very simple, right? Me at home, I have a stakeholder, which is my wife. I have another stakeholder who's my son, right? Let's say then there are in-laws, your friends. Everyone is sort of a stakeholder in some or the other way. Now, the standard definition is that the stakeholder is somebody who can influence your work positively or negatively. That's a standard definition. What it means is that as a person, as a leader here, okay, you want to make sure that you understand all the people you're working with.
Right.
And when you understand that better, you will also understand whether this person is positively impacting the work or negatively impacting the work. Okay. And both are good sometimes, right? Because it's like a devil's advocate someone is playing. Correct. So that's one aspect. So that's the most important thing in terms of corporate communication, is that if you can manage your stakeholders, and this is where then all the breakups happen. How do you manage them? You manage them with the right attitude, you manage them with a certain body language, you manage them with a certain voice. You have to show authority sometimes, you have to be clear, you have to be your voice should be with conviction, basically, right? So those things play into picture. How do you handle conflicts? How do you present, right? And stuff like that. So these are the things that will make you difference between a person who's talking, communicating, and effective communication. Okay. And that's the key, right? That's the key. It's all about effective communication. If you want to thrive in the corporate world, you gotta make sure that you understand this corporate lingos. Okay, it's not just the words, it's the behavior. Okay. And the second, if you want to survive, then anything works. Like, doesn't matter. So Jao is enough, I guess. And the second thing is, if a person who's somebody who's new, for example, in the corporate world, right? I think I'll give them few key tips here, okay? Because they're very new. You said someone who's a fresher.
Yes.
So the first thing is that they should know some skill. If they're recruited for some core skill, like for example, I am a project manager. I should know my project management role properly. If you're recruited for Java or whatever it is, know that. That's number one. Second is, and now this might sound a little irritating to people, is they should read. Okay. Reading is not for your communication. Reading is not speaking. Speaking is a whole different ball game. Reading is to improve your vocabulary.
Right.
It will give you multiple synonyms of the same word. It will make you feel that, oh, you're something special.
Right.
And this is my suggestion to reading, is that you read 6 books in a year, pick 3 non-fiction, pick 3 fiction. The reason to read fiction is because it will help you story tell.
Right.
So same boring things that you want to share to your organization, if you can story tell it, even in 90 seconds, you can do that. But if you can do that, it will be helpful. And fictions can help you evolve that, whole thing in you, because it's such a lovely, amazing stories,
Hmm.
right? And the third point is, I want people to write on LinkedIn. What I mean to say is that take one thing and write on LinkedIn, because here's the thing, okay? Everyone understands things in their local language.
Right.
They convert their local language into English and they speak. Okay. That's one thing. Second is, your spoken language and written language is completely different. You
Hmm.
can't do the same. That's why मेरे यहाँ पे जब मैं project management में एक session लेता था, तो I used to open my session by saying I love you. And I
Okay.
used to look at the reactions, because these same three words can annoy someone, can make somebody like, oh, Amit is so sweet, and somebody will like, pagal ho gaya kya? Right? So the interpretation is different.
Hmm.
That's why writing is important.
Hmm.
Okay. And the next one is journaling. Now, what does that mean? I don't want people to write stories and stuff. All people has to do is simple, is write every day उन्होंने क्या काम किया.
Hmm.
You know why? Because when you're sitting for the appraisal, you will have so much of data that nobody can tell you what you didn't do or do. You
Hmm.
will have proof, and you will have everything to showcase, saying that I'm the best person you can have. I'm leaving.
Hmm.
That's why journaling is important.
Hmm.
And the last one is, I know it's a long list, right, for them, but I think the last one is, try to be that go-to person. The go-to person is somebody whom you can go to and be a reliable person.
Hmm.
Like, hey, Anjali, I want you to do this work, and I can rely on you that you will do this work, or at least you'll come back to me saying that, no, I can't do it. Right.
Hmm. 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 No, these all these 5 points are really important. Be it, the power of storytelling, or be it journaling, or being a go-to person, right? So, when it comes to storytelling in corporate communication, so is
Mm.
it different from the usual communication and the usual storytelling way of talking? And how different is that? Because I think I also read in your book about corporate storytelling. So, I want to understand from you how how it is different from the usual storytelling.
Well, see, the storytelling is, I have another book called as Welcome to the World of Storytelling. But the point here is that corporate storytelling is about how you represent the data in front of somebody so that it becomes exciting, right?
Hmm.
Let's think about it for a moment, okay? Uh, we all know that people in the world, let's take India for example right now, and don't quote me for the stats right now, I'm just making it up. But we all know that because of the smoking cigarette, there's, let's say, 20% people die at the age of 35, for example, right? It's a stat.
Right.
Think about it this way. I come into a presentation and I say that a few years ago my father passed away,
Hmm.
and blah blah blah, and the reason was smoking, and the stat says.
Hmm.
Now think about the impact,
Hmm.
because a story had made it personal. That's why whenever you go to any UNICEF or anybody who's sharing these NGO videos, just have a look now, and you will see that they don't come up with stats saying that boom, 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 boom.
Hmm.
They come up with a story. They show a person who is either begging with not food and da da da, and then they come up with the stats.
Hmm.
And this is exactly what was done by NGOs for a while, and
Hmm.
Apple took it. Nike took it.
Hmm.
See, they don't come, Apple doesn't say that we have a processor or a RAM of blah, 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 right? They just show all the things, and at the end of the ad, it's an Apple logo,
Right.
right? So, story speaks volumes. We
Hmm.
all know that, right? And similarly, you can add it in the corporate world as well. There's just a little tweak to do that,
Hmm.
because we don't want to bore to death them with long story. You
Hmm.
can do that in 90 seconds. You can do that in up to 30 minutes as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
there's a structure of doing things. That's all.
Hmm. 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 Right. So you also mentioned about being a go-to person. So can you, explain it a bit, how to be a go-to person? Of course, one point is being reliable and, being available and reliable. If someone has assigned you a task, then you should be reliable in submitting that in time, as you mentioned. But, what other are the key factors? I think I also read your post on LinkedIn the other day about it. So,
Yeah,
I would like to understand from you, for the audiences themselves, how to be a go-to person in the corporate world.
sure. See, the go-to person, so there's a difference. And the reason I also, because it was fresh in my mind, I had to say this. I also mentioned that the go-to person is not a ass-licking person. And I want
Hmm,
to be very clear in this because people should not feel it like that. A
hmm,
go-to person is someone who understands his roles and responsibility.
hmm,
See, in the corporate world, Anjali, the most important thing is this, is that people have no freaking clue about their own role and responsibility very clearly.
hmm,
And every year they come up saying that, oh, I did XYZ, I need an appraisal hike. And
hmm,
when you sit with them, you just realize that what you were doing is just a basic things,
hmm.
right? And that's why it's very important for everyone to know where they stand, like what's their core roles and responsibilities are,
Right.
right? And that's the basic that is required from you. If you're doing something amazing in it, still it's the basic, right?
Hmm,
So a go-to person is who is clear about that.
hmm,
And then the go-to person is someone who can make a known decision, a mindful decision of I'm going to take more responsibility to help out someone.
hmm,
The simplest way to be a go-to person is to check you with your manager, you know, and see what you can offload for him or her,
hmm.
you know. So what happens is not only that person gets somebody reliable, right, to do the stuff, you now learn something else. So
Right.
instead of a I-shaped resource, you start becoming a T-shaped resource. That's
Hmm,
what people need, right? I-shape is you do your work. T-shape is I do my work plus I have more skills now,
hmm,
right? So that's another thing. So know your roles and responsibilities, see what you can take up, learn to say no.
hmm.
That's the most important thing. This is the key difference between go to and becoming an ass licker soon.
Right.
Because in doing that more and more and more, you will keep saying yes and yes, and then it's gonna bite you back. So there's a high chance of burning out if you're a go-to person.
Totally.
So
Totally.
knowing to say no is massively important. I think apart from that, I would still suggest journaling is very important because people just underestimate the power of writing things down every day.
Hmm,
Okay. When you do that, 200 days of data, I come from data warehousing, so I know the importance of data. 200 days of data, nobody can beat it.
right.
Nobody can beat it. And you will see automatically, are you scaling up? Are you just flat or are you really going down? And,
Right.
make a decision. So I think the key to go to person is know yourself, know your limitations,
Hmm.
know your roles and responsibility, know when to say no. And, at the end of the day, the other last important thing is that when you're committing to something, do it.
Right. Completely. I think that is very important. And I think most important that you should do what you're committing to.
Yep.
That also brings me to another important point, is about, is it important, like two things I would say. One is, language. Someone who is coming from maybe speaking their own native language that is not English, right? That is official language nowadays, right? So, how important is language in corporate communication? And second, that also brings me to the personality. How important is your personality? Like, does it play a role, like extrovert or being an introvert? Does it play a role in corporate communication?
Interesting. Both are very, very interesting. Why? Because when you hear the answer. So
Hmm,
first, let's take the language, right? Uh, I'm very fluent in English now.
hmm,
Okay. I've written in my book as well. Till age 20, or I think age 18 or 19, I couldn't speak fluent English. Okay, like मेरे इंग्लिश के वर्ड्स एक के बाद एक लाइन से नहीं आते थे. इतना वर्ड्स था मैं कि 8th में मेरे को प्रिंसिपल ने बुलाया था. तो one day prior to meeting him, I was thinking that how I'm going to talk to him. And this is what I thought, that the first thing I'll do is I'll enter there and I'll say that, sir, can I speak in Hindi? That's the only English I could know. And from there to where I am, it's a massive thing, right? At least for me. Now, so to answer your question, language doesn't play a vital role in effective communication, but without the current English language, you will have limitations. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So there are a lot of smart people who cannot speak English, but doesn't mean they cannot communicate. They can effectively. But the problem happens when you have to do it in English.
Right.
And the solution, unfortunately, to that is learn English. And most of the corporate people know English because by the time they get into their degree college, it's mostly in English. So to them, the solution is read books.
Right.
It will help you to build vocabulary. Listening to watching movies is not going to help you a lot because there's a lot of crap as well sometimes. Listening to music depends, but reading books is always a good thing because it will give you multiple advantages.
Right. And it
So
is not going to, grow old. Reading
yeah,
is,
yeah, exactly. Just keep reading. Now, introvert and extrovert thing, right? Because people ask me this, and here's the interesting part. I'm ambivert. So someone who's intro and extro both. Now, let me explain what does that mean. It means that I'm introvert at home and extrovert at out. And it's very strange. People who know me at home, they know me that Amit baat nahi karta. Okay, you will not find a silent person like Amit ever. That's what my entire family knows me for. People who know me out, they're like, oh my God, Amit chup nahi baithta. All right. So, will it be a problem? Now, we all know that introvert and extroverts draws energy, and introvert's energy is sucked out of them when they are in the group, and extroverts draw energy from others, right? So what happens is, what it means is that when I am outside looking at so many people, I get energetic. Okay. And that's what extrovertism comes out in me, right? But let's say, for example, if someone is introvert, when they do that, they get scared.
Right.
Right. And the only way to come out of this scareness is basically, the only way to do anything which you don't like is by putting yourself in that situation again and again and again. If you don't like to go to gym, you got to go to gym. You do that again and again. And then once you start seeing the results, then the steps become simple, right? Now, it's easier said and done. So what I would personally suggest is that, go slow. Go to digital conferences first. If you go to sites like Eventbrite, for example, right, there's so many things happening, correct? Go there. The first step is let the video be off, right? And you continue. The next step is turn your video on, right? So that will give you some bit of courage.
Right.
The third step is, keep your video on. The fourth step is go to some actual sessions that are happening, and so on and so forth. When you do that consistently, the key is consistency. When you do that over and over and over and over again, I'm not saying you'll become extrovert, but at least you will have the way to handle that insecurity that builds up if you're introvert. Like for me, let me give you a quick example. When I'm at a family gathering, oh my God, it's very tensed moment for me because I don't see them as unknown group of people. I
Hmm.
know them, and I become a little nervous. But
Hmm.
believe me, after 2 decades or 3 decades now, people say that, oh, Amit at least talks. So I've built up. It took me 3 decades.
No, I completely agree with you, and I resonate with that. I mean, I resonate with that fact a lot. That in my family, people know me as someone who is very quiet and calm and silent. But when I am at my work, then I have to talk. I have to, be out there, and that came from the practice. That came from the consistency of doing my work. That involves a lot of communication, right? So I think that's
Exactly.
a great point to take care of. And one study I was, going through that mentioned that introverts are better leaders than extroverts. Now, what do you have to say about that? Do you also believe in that finding that introverts can be better leaders than extroverts? They, what they basically meant to say was that because introverts have this tendency to practice a lot on their skill, and that is why it tends to make them a better leader,
Better.
right?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I think extroverts can get into egocentric thought
Hmm.
process, you know, and that's where introverts would score. And, because they forget being egoistic, they can't even show up. So, and that practice would make them better. It's like the tortoise and the hare thing, right? So if I see that the tortoise is consistent in doing that, he overtakes the hare.
Right.
And that's what basically happens is that introvert, because they don't require energy from the world, right?
Hmm.
They are self-sustained with it.
Hmm.
Whereas extrovert in a COVID situation would go crazy,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Because they can't do anything and they will like be panicking and, oh my God, kahan pe aa gaya main?
Hmm.
Correct? Whereas introvert would flourish.
Right.
And at a senior level positions, I know one thing, it's a lonely place there,
Right.
right? Because you can't share everything with everyone because they're your peers. You don't know what would they take, and it's still employees, right? At the end of the day, and that's where the most benefits for an introvert comes in,
Hmm.
is that they're lonely and they're fine.
Hmm. Right. And now let's come back to another important aspect of corporate communication, that is networking. So would you suggest a couple of tips for beginners, how to network well in this corporate world?
Hmm. See, networking is very interesting. I'll share a small story with you, right?
Hmm.
हम stories के ही बने हुए हैं.
Right.
In the year 2020, I was working in Sweden till then, and I decided to move to India.
Hmm.
And this was just before COVID. I got a residency for Australia. So I thought, all right, you know what? Abhi last company mein 14 years ho gaya hai. So, Banvas is over now.
Hmm.
Right? Uh, so I should move on. So I
Hmm.
left that company. I came to India,
Hmm.
came right during the time when COVID hit around 20th of March or something when the lockdown was there.
Hmm.
And then left my job.
Hmm.
And now I was jobless.
Hmm.
Okay. Australia had stopped getting people in because of the COVID. So entire world went in lockdown. And I realized that I have to go to Australia and search a job there. I didn't want to do anything in India because it would be injustice with somebody, short term के लिए मैं job कर रहा हूँ.
Hmm. Hmm.
तो मैंने बोला ठीक है. I mean, that's what we save money for. These bad times. This is a
Right.
bad time.
Hmm.
And this is where I started one thing is that I knew my destination is going to be Melbourne in Australia.
Hmm.
So I wanted to make sure that I have connections there,
Hmm.
right? So I started networking.
Hmm.
First, I was job hunting. Hey, Anjali, do you have a job there? Oh, Amit, where are you? I'm in India. Oh, sorry. And then I realized this is stupidity. So I stopped that. I
Hmm.
stopped asking people jobs.
Hmm.
And then I realized that, that's not networking. If Anjali has to really help me out, she needs to know me as well, right?
Right.
Just a hi is not going to work,
Right.
right? So I started getting on to podcast, connecting with people,
Hmm.
going through their articles, write myself and stuff like that. So I did a lot of that.
Hmm.
And the best part is over a period of 8, 9 months, I developed a lot of good circle. People started knowing Amit.
Hmm.
Remember, 8, 9 months. It didn't happen overnight.
Right.
February, I landed in Australia. I was in quarantine. Saturday, I landed. Sunday, I informed on LinkedIn I am in Australia. Monday, I got a job of call.
Hmm.
Tuesday, I got an interview.
Hmm.
Thursday, I got second round. Friday, I got an offer. 5 days of me landing in Australia, and I had offer. And that post on LinkedIn went for 35,000 views
Hmm.
because people were crazy how a person with no experience in Australia got a job. And the power of networking lies there. Is
Hmm.
that if you want to network with someone,
Hmm.
you gotta, not with someone, if you want to increase your network, you
Hmm.
gotta give yourself as well. You
Hmm.
just can't come up one fine day asking for favor.
Hmm.
And when you give yourself, you have to timely give yourself. What I mean to say is that if we are having a community gathering or something, come and show your face. Like,
Hmm.
meet up, say hi, say hello,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. That's true networking.
Hmm.
And now, if I take this in your office, you as an employee, if you're working in IT, no
Hmm.
one is asking you not to connect with sales or HR or somebody. Go and talk to people, right? Go and talk to people with just one thought in the mind that I'm not here
Hmm.
to gain something from you.
Hmm.
That's the key. When you have that thought process, and it will, believe me, it will show on your face, it will show on your attitude that
Hmm.
you're not here to get.
Hmm.
The law that I have learned is give first and you'll get, period. And that is networking. You got to give first.
Right. So you suggest that people should prefer both online and offline ways of networking.
Of course.
Hmm.
Of
In
course.
online, I think LinkedIn is a wonderful platform right now these days to
Yeah.
network. Other than that, do you think cold emailing works?
Cold emailing works. See, the other thing is, I think now this is my thought process because I didn't do a lot of cold emailing. I tried that for the
Hmm.
job and it didn't work, honestly. And
Hmm.
I realized that, I might be pissing people off.
Hmm.
So, and I didn't want it to, next time that, oh, Anjali will just put me in spam forever. Right.
Right.
So, when it comes to business, if you have a service or something, that's a different thing, probably.
Hmm.
But let's say if you have something to give, let's say you are a 2, 3 years old person in your corporate and you want to switch job,
Hmm.
but you have something to give first,
Hmm.
right? Maybe if you can go to the company and they are doing something, and if you write a piece of a code or something, a proposal,
Hmm. Hmm.
that's fantastic. Go ahead and cold email to a lot of people. There's so many influencers these days that if you go and help them, they might just bring you in.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, cold email in that sense could help. But apart from that, it's just a waste of time, I believe. I'm
Hmm.
not sure. I haven't tried it a lot, honestly.
Right, right. So now when we come to, leaders of an organization, so what do you think that, what are the key things that leaders of an organization should have in them? If someone is, for the first time has been promoted to a leadership position where they have to lead a team, be it a team lead, right? So, what are the key things that they should have in themselves, according to you?
I think one of the key things that I'll tell everyone, especially leaders, is that, yeah, do your stakeholder management. Okay, same thing. Know your team members, uh, know where they're coming from, what they need. One of the things I used to do is I used to sit with my team and I used to ask them this question that, what do you want from this project? It's like, Amit, I'm here for this project to work on this piece of code because I'm a technical fellow or I'm a database guy. I'm like, no, no, no. What do you want when the project ends? Do you want a promotion? Do you want appreciation? Do you want to learn something new? Do you want to take my job? Like, learn project management. What do you want? And this helped me to handle the teams very well. Why? Because now I know who's here for what reason. Okay. And I can allocate work to them accordingly. So it really helped me. That's one. So know your stakeholders. It's very, very important. Okay. The second step is you got to build a safe environment of work. So what does that mean is that people have the nasty habit, when things go wrong, they come and talk to your team members, and in sometimes in a not very nice way. You have to shield them, period. It's your job to shield them. It doesn't matter what crap has happened, but it's your job. So the way I define a leader is the person who is first to get slapped and the last to get appreciation. Okay. So you get whatever it is required, then pass it on in a certain manner. Because when you do this, you create a safe environment, you create a trustworthy environment. When they know that I can rely on Amit Khanna, they will do what is required to make sure that my ass is not on fire. Right? And the work will be done more. And they also know that Amit will bring me when an appreciation is there. So now they are safe. That means अगर कुछ गलती किया तो अमित संभाल लेगा, और अगर कुछ अवार्ड मिला तो वो अमित हमको दे देगा. So they are in a win-win situation, right? But what I get out of this is that my senior leadership will be now like, oh, he takes care of his people. The next is his people are doing well. Still, he doesn't take credit for it. He's such a down-to-earth person. Yes, of course, that's the idea of it. But that also showcases that other people would love to work with you. And this is what I used to hear for me in some projects. And I'm not saying that मैं संत महात्मा ऐसे ही बन गया. I did a lot of mess in I've got a lot of projects, right? So I did a lot of mess and learned these things. But these are the things: build trust, know your stakeholders, build a safe environment, trust them. And the last one, most important one, is that talk less. It's the most key. If you want to rise in the corporate world, talk less. फिर जो भी निकलेगा ना मुंह से, people will sit and listen. If you talk a lot, then अच्छा बोलो बुरा बोलो वो सब उसी में निकल जाएगा. And of course, there's a whole communication, this, that, but that's a separate thing. This is the attitude part of it. That's why I'm focusing here a lot. Communication, to hey, leadership skills and all those traits are there. And I've shared it a lot in my book as well. But the things that I'm saying right now is that core trait a person needs to have, because that will build them as a leader, a respected leader.
Right. Now, when we talk about leaders, I also bound to think about the firing culture. I mean, right. So, as a leader, what should be the way? I don't know. And because when the person is on the other side, then to interpret how it is going to happen or what is happening is obviously he's on the one vulnerable side, right? But as a leader, I mean, what are the things that they should keep in mind while taking that part?
In this case, you mean especially in firing someone?
Yeah.
Or just sharing some bad feedback as well?
Let's talk about both.
Both.
Sharing the
Okay.
bad feedback and also firing someone.
All right. Uh, well, most of the time the HR should fire someone, so that's nice. But let's take both, right? So
Hmm.
there's a technique that I learned from one of the famous person who is brother to the NLP founder,
Hmm.
and it is called as a 2 3 point communication. I want to share that with you folks here today. Okay. Uh, yeah, let me grab a sheet of paper. So let's assume this is some stuff that we have noted down for you, which is not good.
Hmm.
Now, imagine you and me are like this on the call, and I say that, let's say if, this is a bad news to you, all
Hmm.
right, or your appraisal cycle, which has gone bad, correct? It would work in both the scenarios. Hey, hi, Anjali. You are here today. It's how are you feeling? Blah blah blah, and then I say, I'm very sorry to say that you're fired. Now, saying this straight to you,
Hmm.
okay, will demoralize you, will put you in shock, or even if you're ready, you might get into a very low level of, self-respect, or you might hate me, or I don't know what all might happen to you,
Hmm.
correct? Because we are face to face,
Right.
correct? And that is a very tensed moment.
Hmm.
Correct. So, and I don't want that negativity to come on to me as
Hmm.
well. And I don't want to share this bad news over to you straight to the face.
Hmm.
So this is called as a 2 point communication. I'm communicating with you. I'm
Hmm.
point one, you're point two. Now we introduce a third point
Hmm.
where I sit to next to you like this.
Hmm.
And instead of me looking into your eyes, we
Hmm.
both look down at the sheet.
Okay. Hmm.
And then I pass the information.
Hmm.
And we look down at the sheet for a while after giving you the bad information. Hey, Anjali, just to let you know, now I'm not looking at you at all.
Hmm.
Correct? I'm bothered at the sheet. Based on the data that we have, we are very sorry that we have to let you go.
Hmm.
Is there any last things that you want to share? Right. So what we do is, and this is a very profound technique that I found, because what I'm doing is I'm cutting off a lot of tension, I'm cutting off a lot of negativity, and I'm saying that I'm not the reason, Anjali, here.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is the reason.
Right.
You got it?
Hmm.
And this works.
Hmm.
This works. It's a very simple 3 point communication technique, but it works. And the reason it works is because it is taking away all the negativity that you might have towards a person, and it's taking up to a non-living entity.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's one thing. Of course, with all this comes now the other parts of communication that I talk, the compassion part. Compassion comes from your tone of voice as well, right?
Hmm.
Are you excited firing somebody, right?
Hmm.
Or are you really really compassionate with it?
Hmm. Hmm.
So your voice goes a little slower,
Hmm.
right? Your tone goes a little down,
Hmm.
and you showcase that I'm compassionate with you.
Hmm.
I'm there with you. Your
Hmm.
head all of a sudden tilts, because that's a sympathy, that's an approachable kind of a way, that when I'm looking straight at you, I'm very serious, I'm there to make, point blank, I'm saying something. But the moment I tilt it, I'm like, all right, no, don't worry, I'm
Hmm.
there to help you, even after, if there's anything that I can do for you. So
Hmm.
you see, there's a lot of techniques that follow your voice. It's not just straight lines.
Right. That
So
that brings me to, a line I read in the book as well. It is not what you say or how you say it. It is, how you make me feel.
exactly. I
Hmm.
just love that line. It's how you make me feel is more important than anything.
Hmm.
ये सुना होगा राइट हमने बहुत बार, अरे वो क्या बोल रहा है, वो जो उसने बोला वो that was not what he meant,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That's what the whole line is all about.
Hmm. Hmm. So one more, thing that I was going through the book was narcissists. Don't be one. So let's discuss a bit about that, and then when we come back to the book itself, we would love to know about the book story. But let's lastly discuss about narcissists. Don't be one. Mm,
I have been narcissist a lot. Okay,
mm,
so what exactly was narcissist? I'll tell you. Narcissist was you know it's sort of a person who takes away everything that you are saying
mm,
from you to themselves. You know, they want to be important in every damn thing. Let me
mm,
give you classic examples. Okay, limitlessly weird examples.
mm,
Oh, you know what? My father passed away and I had a very tough time. अरे मेरा तो इससे बुरा हाल हुआ था. I'm like what the fuck? I'm like, come on.
mm,
And when I date back myself to all the years, and I'm
mm,
like, people had been, including me, by the way,
mm,
and
mm,
that's what I wrote there,
mm,
including me, knowingly, unknowingly, we have been narcissists so many times.
mm,
Like, I was such a badass that, कुछ भी बात कर लो वो घुमा फिरा के मैं अपने आप पे ही ले आता था टॉपिक को. Like for example, oh, I've been to US and oh, have you been to Disneyland? Oh, it is such a nice place, blah blah. And like,
mm,
come
mm,
on, that. So they want to be the center of attraction, attention.
mm,
You know, they want, and these are the people who also have a lot of ass lickers in a way, right? And you can identify them easily. These are the people who are not very egoistic. These are the people who are not, who don't take no for an answer. These are the people who become very adamant as well. All
mm.
right. Because if the discussion rolls away from them,
Mm.
they'll not like it.
Right.
So, and I realized it. I mean, when I started writing it, and I'm like, this word came across, and I'm like, shit, मैं कितने बार कर चुका हूँ ये चीज.
Mm, mm,
And just to share it with your listeners here. So in 2017 or 18, I read a book called As Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday.
mm,
Okay. And even before that, since I've been reading a lot of books, lot. Like, मुझे बहुत मजा आता है
mm,
books पढ़ने. Uh, and the reason is one of the reason is that books comes with stories, right? And stories then give the proper meaning to an idea
mm,
or a thing that you want to implement,
mm,
correct? So it makes sense sometimes. uh, so while reading that, so I realized that I've been egoistic many times.
mm,
Okay, I try to be humble as much because humbleness has paid me a lot, like really, really a lot, so that's what I try to be all the time. And that was the birth of my email address, no ego Amit at gmail.com, that I created in 2018 after realizing that. And the reason I created that email ID is that every time I should remember that Amit, don't have ego. Amit, don't have ego.
mm.
So narcissist came out of that. Read the story that I've shared. But yeah, that's narcissism. People want that everything should revolve around them. They
Mm.
want to be part of every damn story on the planet.
Right,
भले ही
right.
वो अच्छी हो या बुरी हो.
True. Also, like lastly, one more point that I wanted to understand from you was about the external communication. Of course, Corpcom is about internal and external communication. So, about the external communication, if you can, break down for us a couple of points that someone from an organization should keep in mind while doing that external communication with maybe a prospector's client or maybe someone who is just outside the organization.
Hmm. Now, external communication is like very vast, right? Like PR is part of external
Right,
communication, right? Public
right,
relations and so on.
right.
I'll try to see how I can I can simplify it for someone who's a corporate employee, okay,
Hmm.
or who is into startups, for example.
Right.
Let's take these two examples because I can relate it to them
Hmm, hmm,
easily. So for a corporate employee, what would be an external communication? The external communication would be that if they are part of PR or something, anything that comes out of their mouth has to be legally checked by the legal team, and they can speak. That's one. That's big. Okay. That has a lot of policy and procedures. But apart from that, if a corporate employee, let's say, goes to a AWS, Amazon Web Service Cloud seminar in Bombay, right? That person is representing the company, correct? Now, whatever comes out of their mouth is an external communication in that sense, right? There's no time to understand the stakeholders there.
Right.
What you can do from your side is to make sure that you have a elevated pitch, elevator pitch, as we say. You should have something that you can talk about your company that makes someone interested in you, right? So how do you do that? So for example, if someone asks me, Amit, what do you do now? So I tell them, imagine for a moment that you are out on a vacation in Hawaii and you have an important parcel that's going to come across. Now you are at Hawaii and there's no network there, like no Wi-Fi and stuff. But imagine if you cannot even check the text message whether the parcel has been dropped or not. How would you feel? Not so good, right? So I currently working in Telstra help this international roaming thing possible so that you can get your packages delivered where you are and still get a text message in Hawaii. So there you go. Now I made it interesting. I could easily say that I'm a Scrum lead in a Telstra organization, right? So it's storytelling, right? You can say these things. That's part of external communication. In the external communication, the key is that how well do you know your company? The second is, do you know your company values? And the third is, how well do you know your work impacting the company? Three things. That's all. If you can answer these three things, all right, you can frame a very small 2-statement line that you can put it on LinkedIn as well, and that can shine wherever you go. Okay.
Right.
What was the next question? I'm sorry.
I think
Oh, external company as a startup,
Startup.
right? Well, in that case, the simplest thing is that you got to know same thing, your own values, right? What is the service? And the most important thing, what is the problem you are here to solve?
Right.
That's the key, right? Nobody, literally, nobody bothers about anything that I create, like my book. If I can solve their problem, then my book is a hit. Otherwise, it's a paperweight.
Right. Now, coming to the book, as you mentioned that, what problem we are solving with this book. So I really like the title here, your 60-day journey from corporate clowns to leadership crowns. So, we would want to, understand from you, first of all, what inspired you to write this book? And then, what went through while the, writing process was still on? And then how in 60 days a person can become a leadership crown to a corporate clown.
Sure, sure. So I'll tell you. So my inspiration, I'll share the inspiration and the crown and the clown part. Okay. And then I'll share a bit of the journey. So, we all know what exactly is a clown, right? Joker. What is a joker? What does a joker do basically? A joker is someone who makes us laugh, right? What I realized when I was in my first years of my as a project manager is that after a couple of hard projects, I realized that I'm sort of a joker. What it means is that I have a title, people enjoy talking to me, we have good coffee times and stuff like that. We enjoy our Friday evening, daru parties and all. But at work, people are not really respecting me that much. They might respect me because I hold the designation, but not because of Amit Khanna.
Right.
So, in a way, I'm a joker, right? Like, I'm there to entertain people.
Hmm.
And that's pretty much it.
Hmm.
And believe me, that's not the word I learned at that time. The Joker word came into after deep analysis of myself.
Hmm.
But what happened is, because of that, I realized that, I don't want to be like this. I want to be respected. I want to be heard.
Hmm.
Correct. And there's only two things that you need to do. If you
Hmm.
want to be respected, if you want to be somebody who wants to make an impact, be
Hmm.
valuable to the organization, and you know in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, social needs, there is these top two things, self actualization and stuff like that. If you want to reach to that level where you feel worthy in an organization, you got to do two things.
Hmm.
And that's what the crown is. You got to know your own skill for what you're there. So I
Hmm.
should know everything about project management, every aspect of it.
Hmm.
Right? That's number one. Second is, I should be able to handle this project management, convey the project management, talk about it, do it.
Hmm.
And that is your communication.
Hmm.
You want to call it as soft skills, you want to call it as required skills, anything.
Hmm.
But that encompasses your body language, your voice, how you write, how you talk to people, how you handle conflicts, how you deal with meetings, how you persuade, how you negotiate,
Hmm.
every aspect of it.
Hmm.
It falls in that big umbrella of soft skills,
Right.
right? These were the two things that will make you from a clown to putting it a crown.
Hmm.
So that was the core fundamental of it.
Hmm.
Now, my journey started around book writing not that long ago. It started in 2022. Yeah, 22. Where because I was working with so many clients, I was helping people, things were going fine. We were getting testimonials that Amit, ye change ho gaya, mere mein ye change ho gaya. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Now, how can I reach to many people?
Hmm.
Right? I've got a lot of videos on YouTube, but then I thought, it's so scattered everywhere,
Hmm.
right? Not everyone would come and join me, because we don't want everyone to come and join me, right? Because they're at different levels. I don't want people to join me at, levels where they need some different help,
Hmm.
correct? So I was very, very particular about, I want to help, but what's the best way? And the best way came out that I should have a book.
Hmm.
But that book thought process came in later of 2022, like August, September, or October of 22.
Hmm. Hmm.
But luckily for me, I write. Okay, I write a lot because मुझे अच्छा लगता है. और
Hmm.
मेरा घर एक स्टेशनरी की दुकान भी है, by the way.
Hmm.
Okay, so I realized that, it's not that challenging for me to put up a book, because if you go to my chapters, you will realize that there's no one story going through it.
Hmm.
The reason I did it is because if you as a person is only focused on conflict issues, just go to my conflict management chapter and read it.
Hmm.
So what it meant is that I had all these things which
Hmm.
we teach as well. We teach more than this. I can't put everything in it.
Hmm.
But what all we teach, I basically had all the material, right? Somewhere or the other. It was just scattered massively.
Hmm.
So my job was to collate them.
Hmm.
So that's what I did. First few months, I did a massive collation of all the things. All
Hmm.
right. And I just started dumping on a Word document, irrespective of how the things are structured. And then I started, then it dwelled upon that same boring writing task. And, the worst is the editor who comes in and then, kills a lot of things that
Hmm.
you have written. But that was my journey. My journey was basically, for me, it was not that challenging, I would say, because I am sharing what I'm teaching. Let
Right.
me put it this way. Okay. So it's not that, okay, oh my God, I went through some grueling thought process. No. And if you go through every book, every chapter has a story, and that is my story. I
Hmm.
didn't even have to go and take stories from anybody. Like, hey, I am made up of stories. Like, I
Hmm.
have got so many failed projects
Hmm.
that that becomes the base of it. So I
Hmm.
thought, why not यार, मेरे पास तो सब कुछ है, मेरी
Hmm.
खुद की स्टोरीज है, मैं जो सिखाता हूँ वो भी मुझे पता है क्या करना है.
Hmm.
I have my life story in place. All
Hmm.
I have to do is stitch it.
Right.
And that took a very long time. That was absurdly long. I
Hmm.
never thought that it will take like almost 6 months to
Hmm.
just stitch things. Imagine अगर मुझे scratch से लिखना होता तो I don't know when I would have finished
Hmm.
it.
Right, right. So even when it was my interaction with Robin Sharma, so he told me that just write to the best way to start your book is to write the first page, and then second page, and then third page, and then your book is ready. You would not know that, right? So
Absolutely.
as an author, any advice you would have for budding writers or authors?
I would say the same that I give it to everyone.
Hmm.
Journal every day.
Hmm.
Journal every day. Here's one more thing that I share in my storytelling, and it might help someone.
Hmm.
Is that when you write something, let's say I write my day today and I'll say, I had a meeting with Anjali.
Hmm.
The next things I want to write down my feelings and my emotions that I had there. That's all. Because what would happen is when you write down the topic
Hmm.
and you write down the relevant emotion with
Hmm.
it, this will become a cue or a pointer to elaborate on it
Hmm.
later.
Hmm.
Correct? And it could become 5 lines, could become 20,
Hmm.
because then it's all about the science and other lines that could allocate with it, right?
Hmm.
But that's the key. Write down what you did. So, one of the things that I tell people is that, and I used to do this myself, is let's say I have a bad day at work. Like, let's say I had a very bad meeting. So,
Hmm.
I'll come and I'll write blah, blah, blah meeting.
Hmm.
And, you know, I did not like this, what this person said, blah, 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 blah.
Hmm.
Done. 3 years later, when I read it, I can recollect almost everything from it.
Hmm.
And then I can write a narrative on it, that, why I didn't feel bad, what could have been done better, what I could have done better, or how can I be away from such toxic people or whatever. And
Hmm.
believe me, I have a lot. There's an app called as Day One,
Hmm.
DAY1,
Hmm.
and I have close to 800 entries in it. Okay, for a
Hmm.
span of close to 3-4 years.
Hmm.
And those have helped me a lot,
Hmm.
because वहां पे मैं सब लिखता था. आज
Hmm.
इसके साथ ये हुआ वो हुआ blah, blah. All, even what my son did and what happened at home, good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter. All I used to do is just write.
Hmm. Hmm. No, that's a wonderful tip. Just write whatever you are feeling, and yeah.
Yeah,
Now
300 days, 300 topics.
right, totally. You'll never get out of ideas, I think.
Exactly.
And when we're talking about books, would you recommend any a couple of books that people who are in the corporate world should read?
Yeah, I would. Can I share them?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay. Of course, read my book first, okay?
Of course.
But apart from that, give me 1 second. So the first book is Bhagavad Gita, but by this person, by the way, okay? Eknath Easwaran.
Hmm.
All right. The reason is it's a very, very different translation. At least I resonate a lot with this book. Okay. I've read it countless number of times because it gives me a very different thought process. The other interesting book, I have actually two here, but
Hmm.
the other interesting book is this Good Arguments.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, this is a book on debates.
Hmm.
But the interesting part is that this guy, who is Australia's two-time world debating champion, he
Hmm.
has a very unique ways to share on how to debate. Debating in a big area is very, very challenging, right?
Hmm.
uh, so when you read this book, your persuasion skills, your negotiation skills, conflict management,
Hmm.
those areas become better.
Right.
Because one, golden rule that I teach everyone and I'll share here is that when you get into a conflict, and if you're the one who's leading that work, you always start up by this line, the meeting is that whatever we decide is the best for the project and the company.
Hmm.
So when you say this, I'm okay if Anjali rejects Amit's idea. I'm
Hmm.
okay. As
Hmm.
long as Anjali can convince Amit that her idea is better and it is better for the company.
Right.
When I have that thought process, and this book will give you a lot of tips.
Hmm.
The last, I know you didn't ask me, you only asked me for two, but the last one is this. This is Dale Carnegie's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. It's a very, I'm very glad to get a very old
Old
print
cup.
of this book. But this is a really, really good book,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, uh, because हर दिन बहुत टेंशन होता है ओके
Hmm.
लेट्स बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट राइट स्ट्रेस गोes everywhere. These sort of books keep you a little grounded and calm. And of
Hmm.
course my book, that is at the top of the
Right. We have it.
yes,
Definitely.
just joking.
I'm going to share, the link of your book as well so that our
No, no
listeners
worries.
can definitely purchase their copy. Right. So, final thoughts on, how this corporate communication has evolved, like in this digital age. So, any final thoughts on that?
I think communication is very complex now,
Hmm.
very complex, and I'll tell you the reason. The reason being that we came from stone age to whatever to industrial age,
Hmm.
and people were like ye boss hai, ye employee hai, ye bolega, ye karega, right?
Hmm.
Gone those days, right? Now it's many things. Now we were just working within a certain group of people pehle to, right? We were working, let's say, even in India, there were people working within their cities, within their caste, within their communities. Now that's not there. Now it's global. You
Hmm.
just don't know who is going to work with you from which part of the world,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
when people come, they come with views, they come with opinions, they come with certain baggage
Hmm.
as well. The baggage, they come with cultural opinions,
Hmm.
right? So communication is very complex in that sense.
Hmm.
What it means is that what I want to tell you, you will interpret it in exactly the same way I want you to understand.
Hmm.
That is communication,
Right.
correct?
Hmm.
And that is more challenging. So, my takeaway is that you have to read,
Hmm.
be open in understanding others,
Hmm.
keep all the cultural and other aspects aside when you're in the business world.
Hmm.
Okay. You know, whatever it is, racism, gender biased, whatever it is, right? Keep
Hmm.
it aside as much as possible if you can. And the next is you gotta understand the silent communication a lot,
Hmm.
the non-verbals. People, those expressions, there is a lot of it.
Right.
And the last one is the proximity of
Hmm.
how people are sitting next to each other, how people are standing when they go to somebody's desk, how people come and hug people, handshake, whatever it is. These are those lot of teeny tiny things, but if you're observant, you're mindful of these, you will understand much better. You will be able to communicate better, read the
Hmm.
books so that your fluency, your vocabulary improves.
Hmm.
Remember, you're dealing with humans. They're the
Hmm.
most complex organisms on the planet,
Hmm.
massively complex. So,
Right.
so communication plays a massively vital role, especially today.
Right. Great, great. I think we touched upon everything and, more than we discussed about, but it was a wonderful conversation. And I think through stories, I happened to learn a lot. And I think whole podcast would be amazing for my listeners. And, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. And,
Thank you very much.
see you again on this podcast. Maybe discuss some other stories next time. And
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Amit, for joining us
Thank you
today.
very much for bringing me on to your podcast, and I hope your listeners enjoy.
Definitely. थैंक यू। तो कैसा लगा आज का पॉडकास्ट? आई होप काफी हेल्पफुल रहा होगा, बिकॉज हमने काफी सारे मुश्किल कॉन्सेप्ट सिंपली बताने की कोशिश करी थी इस पॉडकास्ट के थ्रू। बट अगर कोई और क्वेश्चंस रह गए हैं आप लोगों के जो आपके माइंड में है, जो मैंने नहीं पूछे, तो नीचे ना हमने सोशल्स डाल दिए हैं ऑफ द ऑथर हिमसेल्फ, मिस्टर अमित खन्ना के सोशल्स, उनके ईमेल कॉन्टैक्ट डिटेल्स डाल दिए। डायरेक्टली भी आप रीच आउट कर सकते हो। एंड इफ यू थिंक if you think that you would want to be a part of this podcast, and if you have a story to tell, definitely reach out to me. And I am so happy sharing stories. I would really want you to be the part of my podcast and share your story, क्योंकि टुकविंग्स का तो सोल ही यही है, कहानियां कहानियां कहना, कहानियां शेयर करना। सो लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड या गाइस। थैंक यू सो मच। बाय बाय, नमस्ते।